We've now got the copy functionality complete. So let's go and add some paste functionality. We can create a new constant. I'm just going to duplicate this, rename things over to paste, and then we're going to also duplicate this event listener. And instead of copy to clipboard, we're going to change this over to paste to clipboard. So above, we can then say that we want to create a new constant called paste to clipboard. Now this also is going to be an async function. We're not going to use the promise syntax for this. We'll just dive straight into using async and await, as we quite rightly should, which means that we can set up a quick try and a catch. Look at that error. We can say console.log failed to paste. We can also pass in that particular error. So this is an interesting piece, and there's two things that we need to look at. The first is reading the text from the Clipboard API, and this requires a user permission. So we can't just start copying and pasting things all around the user's page. We need to explicitly ask for their permission. And we've looked at this permission API. It tends to be living up here. We have stuff like the notifications, which we've already looked at. That is part of the permissions API. Now to do this, we need to await. Of course, we need to say navigator.clipboard. And instead of write text, we're going to look at this read text. Now we don't need to pass in any arguments. However, we do get a return value. So we can say the text that we get back is the result of calling read text, and we can then interpolate. So here I'm going to say paste, just so we know it's coming from the right place, and then we can paste in, and then we can interpolate our text that comes back. So if we save this out, our code gets recompiled, we can press copy. Now it's not going to paste straight away. You can hopefully see that we have this pop-up. So localhost wants to see text and images copied to the clipboard. So again, this is part of the permissions API, and we don't really directly use this permissions API. You can, of course, have a look at the API in your own time, but the permissions API kind of lives behind the scenes, and it gets used by these other APIs such as notifications, geolocation, the async clipboard API, and much more. So we could, in fact, say block, and then we have failed to paste, DOM exception, read permission was denied. So that is our try catch working fully. We can then, of course, go and always allow our paste events. We can then press paste, and then we have paste ... followed by the text that we then wanted to copy. Now the purpose of setting up this code was to allow us to edit the content if we wanted to, but instead of just writing this text, we want to now grab the value from inside of here, which means that above our copy and paste, so then I'm going to add this above because it's not going to interfere with our copy and paste logic, we can then say document.querySelector. And if you remember, we added a class called source. So up above, we then had pre-class equals source. So all we're going to do is read the inner text. So instead of passing in our own string, we can say source.inner text. We can then save this out. We can say copy and then paste, and we then receive our nicely formatted code. So I hope you've enjoyed this video so far. I think this is a really nice API. It's far easier, and it slots into more modern JavaScript development with using things such as async await. The API is really nice and clean. We don't have to use a deprecated document execute command anymore. And there's also things that we can do, such as intercepting, copy, paste, and cut events. Now, to finish this off, you may be wondering how we could perhaps move this text and paste it somewhere else. If we wanted to cut it directly, we could, of course, cut the text, which would remain after we have, for example, written the text to clipboard. Instead of saying copying, we could just set this to completely empty. So that could be your cut command. However, we're going to inject on a paste the text that we copied into a destination. So underneath the buttons, let's go and create a div. I'm going to give it a class called destination, and we'll just leave it empty like so. So we can copy our class of destination, jump down underneath our source. We can rename and create another query selector. We can then reference it directly. So we can say the destination.innerText is the text that we just copied. So let's save this out. We can copy, paste, and you can see that that gets immediately injected into the DOM. And we also see our console log with the exact same data. So I hope you enjoyed these couple of videos on this async clipboard API. In the next video, we're going to dive into hooking into the document copy and paste event and learn how to intercept them and do stuff with them if we like.